Hi, I'm Nikki, the obsessive bookseller. Welcome to this month's episode of Read, Burn, Hoard. This is my favorite ongoing project where I tackle one shelf at a time and focus on that shelf for an entire month, trying to figure out whether I'm going to unhaul the books, keep the books, or read the books. It was originally inspired by Books with Emily Fox's 1 Week, 1 Shelf challenge, which she ran again this year back in February, and I'll link. It was really fun. Picking out of the jar last time, I ended up with shelf number 6, which I mentioned I'm really excited about because it's in line with my A to Z challenge. I seem to be randomly picking everything at the beginning of the collection, and I swear I am not curating it. It is just coming up that way, but it's working out for me. I haven't even really dug into the shelf yet, so let's go see what we're working with this month. Shelf number 6 is at the very bottom. I have some books stacked in front of other books, and I made room because I pulled out some Orson Scott Card for last month's project. So give me a second, let me line these up a bit differently. Okay, that's a little better. Alright, so starting at the beginning, The Unexpected Dragon by Mary Brown. This is a cover art by Luis Rayo. He's my favorite artist, and I tend to collect every book that he's done cover art for. It's not necessarily an indication of quality, but I like it nonetheless. This just seems like a fun, classic, kind of YA fantasy story. Reminds me of the Enchanted Forest Chronicles by Patricia Reed, which is why I bought the book in the first place. It's a compilation, 3 or 4 in one, starting with Pigs Don't Fly. And I really have no idea what to expect, but I feel like it's going to be one that I'm going to enjoy. Famous last words. Okay, I have a bunch of books here by Simon Brown. Some of them don't have covers, but I saw these for sale in another bookstore, a different one that I worked in, and then went back and ordered a bunch. Ended up with some strip copies, ended up buying a bunch. I have not started any of these books yet because I've been intimidated. I keep thinking, okay, I think I like the covers a little bit, but I'm afraid they're going to be dry and boring. I don't think I've ever heard anybody else talk about this series at all. This might even be 2 series. I think 1 trilogy here, 1 trilogy here. So per usual, the smartest thing to do to be most efficient with this project would be to read the first book in this, because if I like it, then I know I've got a lot of good stuff ahead of me. If I don't, then I can make the most impact on getting more space. Whenever I look at them, I'm not excited to read them, so that tells me I need to do some research on those and see if perhaps I may just do myself a favor and unhaul them. We shall see. Obernuntwin, no idea how to say that right, by Isabella Carmody. These are really short books. They were recommended to me by a couple of customers, actually, and so I picked them up based on that alone. I have no idea what they're about, but I really feel like I'm going to like them. Isn't that funny? I have a whole bunch of books in my collection that I think I'm probably going to like or probably not going to like, just based on nothing other than impression of the physical book. Judging books by their cover, I know. This one is a very strong candidate to get read this month, just because I'm very intrigued. I have no idea what it's about. I have to look into that. Priestess of the White, Age of the Five trilogy. This is one of those I've been saving for a rainy day because I really loved Trudy Canavan's Black Magician trilogy. Do yourself a favor and don't do the audios on those. Oh my gosh. But I really loved everything about those. They were a lot of fun, and I have been saving these ever since. And never save books. Don't do that. If I had read them when I first got them because I was really excited about the author at the time, I think I would have enjoyed them a lot more than I will now. So I've learned my lesson there. But yes, this is also a strong candidate to get read. I happen to have also picked up an audio copy for the whole trilogy during one of Audible's sales. So that one would be really easy to fit into my routine this month. And I finally have been able to read them because, I've been hanging on to them for so long. I would really like to read those. Richard Byers' The Black Bouquet, part of the Rogue's Forgotten Realms. I had over 100 of these Forgotten Realm books and Dragonlance stuff at one point, but ended up downsizing them. This is one of the few, based on the excerpt on the back, that made the cut. I'm going to do a little bit of research on it this month to see if I still want to keep it. I may just go digital with it, bookmark it to buy for Kindle, and then get rid of the physical copy, because honestly, this ugly no cover one isn't doing me much good in my collection as is. Stephen Brust with the Vlad Taltosh series, and the only reason I'm pronouncing that the way I am is because if you pronounce it wrong, someone will come out of the woodworks to tell you you're pronouncing it wrong. Evidently, he does not spell things phonetically. This is actually quite timely that I'm on this shelf right now. I have read several of the books in this series. A couple of friends and I on Fantasy Buddy Reads were doing a buddy read for the series in chronological order, and then, kind of my fault, but we all kind of fell off the bandwagon for a while, and because there's a new book coming out this month, we decided to pick it back up again. It is entirely possible that I will read more in this series this month because of that. Now, what I have to decide is what I want to keep physically in my collection. I really like these compilations. I have one over in my read section. I've read a couple out of these particular editions, but not all of them, which is why they're still over here. And then a random one that I picked up from Book Outlet. Seriously though, the covers are really cool on these. But then I have these little books, which I was reading the story physically before I finally got audio copies, and that's why I held on to these. I love reading these really thin, tiny paperbacks. They are so satisfying to get through. But now I kind of got to decide if I like the series enough to hang on to ugly strip copies, or if I want to curate my collection a different way. The smart thing says to get rid of these, but I kind of want to hang on to them until I've actually read the book, just so I have something physical to hang on to. I don't know. That'll be something I have to decide if I want to be particular with it or if I want the space. I'm leaning towards wanting the space, but we'll see. Oh man, there's so many good choices this month. I just don't know what to pick. So, Crystal Rain by Tobias Buckle. I have 2 books by him. Despite the cover, this is actually a science fiction story where they travel to different worlds. And I have been totally intrigued by this cover, and probably the reason I haven't picked it up is because it seems like, for some stupid reason, the books with the best covers are never the good stories. But Bryce over at Shelf Centered has read this series and had it marked in one of his lists that he showed on his channel. And I asked him about them, like, how are they? And he said they were pretty good. So I am really excited to read these eventually. I may save it for Project Sci-Fi, but I'm not ruling it out as a possibility to start this month, that's for sure. Orphanage by Robert Buettner. This is one of those serial sci-fi series, and I'm just not sure if I'm going to enjoy it or not. I have a coverless copy here, and I also have a copy of this on audio, so hanging on to the physical copy is just kind of a bookmark at this point, just a placeholder to remind myself I wanted to read it. I'm not sure if I need to hang on to a coverless copy anymore because digital options are available. When I first brought this home, digital options weren't even a thing. So if you wanted to read the book, you had to own a physical copy. That is not the case anymore. But this one just seems like a fun, fast-paced, kick-butt sci-fi that I am interested in. Ruffian's Choice by S.C. Butler, book 1 in the Stoneways trilogy. I haven't really heard anything on this one. I mean, you've got a dwarf riding a grizzly bear, so kind of weird right out of the gate. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this one. Just looking at it seems like something I will not get around to within the next few years, which is kind of my benchmark for this project. I'm trying to curate my shelves, but I'm going to have to do some research. So, setting those up, I need to make decisions on Stephen Bruce books. I need to do research on the first books in series for Simon Brown. I'm going to read these. I don't care if the reviews are bad or not, so I'm going to leave those. Need to decide if I'm going to keep a physical copy of that, and I need to do research on that one to see if it's one I want to keep and read. So yeah, a couple things to look into, and then yeah, I get to decide what books I want to read. I'm not going to cheat and use my buddy read as an excuse to read all the Vlad Taltosh, since I would have been doing that anyway. So I will definitely be picking up one of the other books. I just need to take a couple days and figure out which one that'll be. So, awesome shelf. I'm super excited. By the time I finish this shelf, the only other one I would not have gotten to in this bookcase is shelf number 4, and it's kind of short to begin with. So, yeah, we are looking good. I made some decisions. I have a couple of different series here by Simon Brown. Keys of Power and then Chronicles of Kaidan. And looking up both of these series, it would appear that they were never turned into ebooks. And I'm justifying getting rid of a lot of my old paperbacks because if I ever want to read them, I can get them in ebook. Now, the reviews for these aren't stellar. I think had they been available, I would have gotten rid of them based on my research for the stories. They're just kind of like straightforward, mediocre, just okay, classic fantasy stories. But I think I'm going to hang on to these for now just in case. And maybe next time through on Read, Burn, Hoard, I'll pick this series, and that way I'll know for sure if I'm justified in keeping it or not. I've got a few others here. Orphanage by Robert Buettner. This is a science fiction series that I've been highly interested in reading, but I have the audio version, and so I don't really need to hang on to this placeholder anymore. Burning that one for sure. I have several books in the Vlad Tolstoy series that I was hanging on to, because first of all, these are tiny mass markets and they are so satisfying to read because you can go through them pretty quickly. Since hoarding these, I have picked up an audio version for every book in the series, and therefore I'm not going to read them physically. I don't really need these placeholders. I could see myself at some point going through and replacing everything with nice hardcovers or something, but I am clearing out a lot of the strip paperbacks out of my life. Forgotten Realms, The Black Bouquet, part of the Rogue series by Richard Lee Byers. I couldn't even find this one on Amazon, let alone an ebook version. And it's one of the two non-Dritzed, non-Salvatore Forgotten Realms books that I've hung on to because the back of the book makes it sound really interesting. So for the time being, I'm hanging on to this one. Griffin's Choice by S.C. Butler. This is book one in a trilogy. Upon doing some research, people say that this is kind of like a Lord of the Rings knockoff, but with just enough differences to make it worth reading, even though it doesn't do anything particularly revolutionary. I debated on this one for a while, and I may still change my mind before the end of the video. It's available as an ebook for $4.99, and I'm not a huge fan of this first cover, but I really like the second two. And considering my current mood and the fact that I'm not really up for classic fantasy very often, I don't know if I'll ever get to this one. So it becomes a debate on whether or not I value the space on my shelves more than I value the possible experience I might have with this one eventually. Considering it is available in ebook, I might let this one go. If this one didn't have a cover on it, it'd already be gone. This one's the one that I'm still kind of floating around on. As for the read portion of this month's project, I decided to pick up the Age of 5 series by Trudy Canavan, starting with Priestess of the White. Thus far, I think I'm about 20% into this book. It's not really grabbing me yet. There's one POV in here of these winged people, and I'm finding that really interesting. The fact that I'm continuing to read is because I want to know more about them. I really like those passages. But the main passages involving the main character here, the White Priestess, I'm not really feeling a depth of character. I'm having trouble keeping everybody straight because I'm not invested. And I'm kind of approaching the thing with a bad attitude just because it's not singing to me yet. But then I marked it as currently reading, and a longtime Goodreads friend and then my patron Sonia says that these are really good books and some of their favorites, or at least they were back when they read them. So I think, well, maybe I should approach it with a bit of a more positive attitude. So I'm trying. I figure I'm going to give it another week of reading or so, which should get me about the halfway point before making the final call. Now, here's the tragedy of this. I love these covers. They've been on my shelves for like 2 decades, and I've always hung on to them thinking I'm saving those for a rainy day because I really like the author's other work that I've read. And now I'm forced to make a decision. I told my patrons this. Sometimes I would rather just leave them on the shelves as positive potential stories as opposed to diving into them and having to actually make a decision and come to grips with reality that they're not as good as I hoped they would be. And that's not saying this isn't going to get better. I'm just not quite on board yet. And truthfully, I really don't know what the inciting moment of the story is, what we're working towards, and the fact that it's just a tad aimless might be also why I'm struggling. So maybe when that plot kicks in, I'll have a little more positive things to say about it. So that's it for now. I will check in later. I am on my 10th day of reading The Priestess in White, and I'm still only about 20% into the book. I am just not jiving with the book for some reason. I don't think it's written poorly or anything. I think it's just the subject matter that I'm not interested in. It should not be this much of a struggle to get through a book that I was excited to read. But here's the thing, I can't tell if it's me or if it's the book. So I don't necessarily want to force myself through the book right now, but I'm also not sure if I've given it enough of a chance to know if I want to unhaul it or anything. I'm also not sure if I have enough time to read another book before the end of this vlog. The real bummer here is that I have both physical copies of these books and audio copies.
If I ultimately end up deciding I don't want to keep them, I'm out quite a bit of investment into the series at this point. I'm still on that weird rotation system where I'm reading a whole bunch of books at once and just kind of bouncing back and forth. And every time I feel like I need to be picking this one up, I'm just like tightened in my gut, like, oh, I don't really want to read that right now. So that is not a good sign. And that's probably also a sign that I need to just unhaul the series, at least the physical copies. And that way I always have the audio digital. It's not taking up any space. But it feels a bit drastic, and I've had them for so long that it's kind of hard to let them go. So I need to think about that. But for sure, it should not be this much of a struggle to get through. So I am officially DNFing the book for now. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to pick up something else, but yeah, I'll update you when I figure out what I'm doing.
After I finished the last update with this Priestess of the White book, I realized I don't have time to read another book for the project this month. This video is actually supposed to be edited within the next 2 days to go live next week. I'm like, shoot, what do? I guess I'm just going to keep reading along in this one to see how far I can get before then. It's definitely not keeping my attention as much as it should be because I started it so long ago. If I were interested in it, I would be a lot further along. Now, of course, the one chapter I've read between my last update and now was actually quite good and had more of an inciting moment than anything else I've read in the entire book so far. Some action, some interesting stuff happens. I'm like, okay, maybe I need to give this one more time. And here's the thing, I don't want to be inefficient with this. So if I set this one down now, I will probably never pick it up again. And then both the physical copies and the audio copies will be sitting there haunting me. And if I do pick it up again, I'll have to go through rereading what I've already read to continue on. And if my enthusiasm isn't good now, it's not going to be any better then. So for the sake of efficiency, I'm going to just keep reading as long as I can until I'm able to make a definitive decision on whether or not I'm going to ever pick it up again in the future. So if I set it aside now, it'd be too inconclusive to let it go now. So I'm gonna keep reading until I find a conclusive answer. We're really gonna make this last minute. Editing Nikki will pop in and let you know how the end of this worked.
Editing Nikki here. It is mid-April in the middle of the desert and I am freaking freezing. It should not be this cold. In the whole lineup of all the books that I'm reading right now, I am least excited to read Priestess of the White, and I need to take that as an indication to just let it go. Focus on the cool books that I'm reading. I mean, I'm in the middle of Empire of Black and Gold by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's one of my favorite things I've read in a long time. I'm reading Ruin by John Gwynne, part of the Faithful and the Fallen series. And even our book club book, Lion of Senate by Jennifer Fallon, is like starting to get really good. All of these amazing things going at once. I do not need to be wasting time on a book that is just mediocre for me at the moment. My personal reading mantras should come into play more often than they do. Life's too short to read books you're not enjoying, and read the best books first because you might not have a chance to read them all. Those messages really hit home for me today, and so I am going to completely stop reading the Trudy Canavan book right now and just look forward to whatever I pick next for this project. I'm pretty sure I don't have the mental fortitude to make a definitive decision on whether or not to get rid of the entire series at this point. Decluttering kind of feels like a muscle that you have to flex, and it gets tired after a while. And the mental energy it would take to be okay with letting something go right now, I just don't have. And honestly, I've been kind of exhausted in that regard lately, and I think that's why I've been a little less hesitant to let things go during this project. In any case, it's not doing any harm on that shelf there, and I can always reevaluate it later. For now, DNFing, removing it from my currently reading, and hopefully I'll get some clarity on it as time passes. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Oh yeah, something about my research on that Richard Lee Byers' Forgotten Realms book just wasn't, it didn't make sense. How could I not find it digitally or even as existing as a used paperback copy online? So I looked it up again. I don't know what I did wrong the first time around, but it is available digitally. And it also is available on audiobook. So I will be burning that copy as well, even though that's not what I say in what follows this clip. But yes, that one will be going also. Based on that, I'm going to commit to making a final decision on whether or not I'm going to keep the series or let it go. If they weren't so pretty or if they didn't have covers, this wouldn't be a problem. Anyway, I hope future me has some better insight than current me, but for now, let's go do a final roundup of the shelf and figure out which books we're burning and hoarding. And pick another number from the jar because that's my favorite part. Okay, a few updates here. So I almost considered starting this one when Priestess of the White wasn't going so well. And according to Goodreads, this book is a compilation of books 2 through 4. Where's number 1? I have no idea. But I love this cover. I'm so drawn to this book because of this cover. Here's a look at what the cover of the second book looks like. Yeah, I really think covers are everything, because that does not look appealing to me whatsoever. So now I have to decide whether or not I want to start with the actual first book in the series, or just assume that the science fiction book club knew which ones were quality and go with those. Hard to say. The bummer is that I accidentally gave myself a spoiler while researching this, just accidentally caught the excerpt of the third book, and it had a major spoiler for the second book. So now I don't even care about reading it right now, but maybe that'll change after a few years. Anyway, we're hoarding Simon Brown for now. All the Vlad Taltosh stuff. I love these books. In the process of reading them with a couple of buddies, so want to hang on to those. Next time I hit the shelf, I'll probably be reading this one. I love, love, love this cover. Hoarding the Forgotten Realms book. And these are technically young adult books. Ones I am highly interested in reading. But they're sold in the typical mass market paperback and published by Tor, which is the reason I have them over here. And I'm probably going to continue to shelve them over here. And we'll look into getting those soon. Now, these were the ones I was on the fence about. I think for the moment, I'm going to hang on to this one, Ryfian's Choice. It looks pretty decent in the long run. You know, that once a year that I'm in the mood for a classic fantasy. And then even though this one doesn't have a cover and I'm trying to create space, I think I still want it as a placeholder so I don't forget how much I would like to read it. So hanging on to those. And I do not need placeholders for these books without covers here. I'm going to actually try to find some of the nicer hardcover versions of this series because I think they are really cool looking. So burning those this month. Now as for these, based on what editing Nikki decided, I am going to keep these for now. If I change my mind, I'll let you know in a future video, but yeah, for now, this is what we're looking at. Okay, here goes nothing. So from 1 to 7, the only shelf I haven't touched yet is shelf number 4. So that would be really cool if that one got picked, but out of 33, chances are low. Okay, got 2. We're gonna go with the top one, the red one. Shelf number 25, one of the higher up ones. This is probably a good thing because all of the places where I don't have enough room to stuff in more books is in the top shelves. We'll tackle that next time. Thank you so much for joining me for this project, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye.